And good evening, hockey fans, and welcome to Day 7 of ACHA tonight as we break down the day that was here at the 2019 ACHA National Championships from Frisco, Texas. I'm Matt Coma. So glad you guys could join us tonight. We have a very special guest with us as well, Molly Mahoney, the Division I commissioner on the women's side, as the Division I and II women's side tournaments kicked off today. First off, Molly, thanks for joining us here on ACHA tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
So Day 1, we had 4 games here right at this rink right behind us here. What were your thoughts on the first day of play?
It's been a great day. We have had really close games. 3 of our 4 games were 1-goal games, and then the last one was 2. So it's been really good competitive hockey, and it's been fun to see.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it in just a little bit here with Boz, but a couple of upsets we saw today. We didn't really see that a whole lot in Columbus a season ago, but that just shows the parity that we have here in this year's field.
Yeah, it's exciting, definitely.
So just your initial thoughts on the venue and stuff like this. I mean, we talked about the rink and stuff like that. How's it been in Frisco so far for you guys?
It's been great facility. It's great to see all of the signage that we've got and the different add-ons that we've been able to do this year.
So as a commissioner, what does it take to put on a tournament like this? When you have this kind of big stage here, you guys are put in the bright spotlight. The men's side tournaments are on now. The spotlight's solely on you guys. What does it take to pull off a tournament like this? Yeah,
lots of teamwork. We've seen, we've got our people that we bring in, and then even Russ has been down here. He's done an awesome job preparing everything ahead of time. The ACHA staff, I have a couple volunteers here as well. It's been really good.
All right, so and then just talk about just the level of hockey. We had Craig Barnett on the show last night, and he talked about the women's game and how much it's risen over the last little bit. As the commissioner, how have you seen the programs grow here in Division I of the women's side?
Yeah, I think it's gotten a lot more competitive, as you've talked about, closer games. It's been lots of good action with that, and I think that starts at the grassroots level and watching those numbers grow as far as the number of kids that are growing up playing hockey, and especially that girls number keeps growing, and it only helps strengthen our teams that we already have and helps the growth of women's hockey overall.
Speaking of growth, do we see expansion down the road? Do we always is it the goal to get as many teams as possible to D1, or would you like to kind of set up more of a farm system to try and get cultivate the top teams in D1?
Yeah, I think overall we want to make sure that our women's division is competitive, and so that's kind of one of the things we sometimes struggle with, is moving teams up to Division I too soon. But I think we've done a really good job we've got a couple of D2 teams coming up that started there at D2, have built their programs, have been very competitive, and are now making that jump to the D1, which is a great move for them.
All right, well, we'll talk with Taylor Halley, the Division II commissioner, later on in the show tonight. But just your thoughts on the future for Division I. Now that we've seen this tournament, do we see a tournament expansion? Do we see anything else along that lines? What's the next step for Women's Division I?
Yeah, I think definitely growing our numbers, and I think as that overall membership growth starts at Women's I, then we would definitely see some growth at the national tournament as well.
All right, well, we have another 4 games tomorrow here on. Will we see any of them go to best of 3? That's always seems to be the question.
That's the big question, absolutely. I think that's the one really cool thing about our tournament is it is best of 3, or best 2 out of 3. And so every single minute of every single game matters. So it's good hockey.
And that's really unique because you don't really get to see that in any other division, and it kind of breeds that rivalry kind of mentality when you get a series like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good stuff.
Well, have fun the rest of the way. We're going to crown a champion here on Saturday. It's going to be a fun time. And first, just thank you for joining us, and then just have fun for here in Frisco for the last couple of days.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that's Molly Mahoney. She's the commissioner for the Women's Division I side. We'll take a break. When we come back, Boz Javari joins me to break down the day that was here in the D1 women's bracket. Well, that's coming up next right here on ACHA Tonight. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ACHA Tonight as we break down Day 7 here at the 2019 ACHA National Championship Tournament. Matt Coma here. That's Boz Javari. He was on the call for 4 games, I believe, today.
I wasn't on the call for 4 games. I was watching all 4 games, so we were. It was intense. It was a good day of D1 Division women's hockey.
Yeah, he was here for the Women's Division I tournament. We just talked to Molly Mahoney, and Just thought we talked about the competitiveness of Division I, and we saw that today with a couple of big upsets. And we'll get to the games here in Frisco. But just your overall thoughts of today's day here in Frisco.
Yeah, it was a heck of a day for hockey, and I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was goaltending performances and defenses, and that really stood out today in hockey. I mean, on one end, a lot of the teams that ended up losing, they ended up seeing a ridiculous amount of shot totals coming against their goalie, and their goalies have just stood up to the task. It's just unfortunate that on the other end, it's just absolutely great defense that kind of made the games the way that they were, and it made for an exciting brand of hockey today. So if you like good goaltending performances and good defenses creating offensive opportunities, like, it was a great day for it.
All right, well, let's go quickly through the games here. We started the day off here bright and early. We had the 4-5 matchup to kick things off. Miami of Ohio taking on Michigan State. And in our first upset, there is the 5 seed in the Redhawks. And can you really call it an upset in a 4-5 matchup if the 5 ends up being the 4?
No, we were actually, Brett and I, we were actually on that game. We kind of made the joke of flipping a coin and to figure out who was going to win the game. And in a way it was. Miami actually came out firing, and they've been they're 3-time national champions. They've been in the finals, or at least in position to strike for the finals after multiple years. And for whatever reason, they're always in contention for a championship. So I don't think by any means it was an upset. And they met during the year as well, and it was a pretty even matchup. I think what stood out to us, the fact that Aaron Sparks wasn't playing for Ohio, and Ohio, or Miami, Ohio, still ended up pulling out the W. So it was a great game to call, a great first game to be a part of, a good morning matchup that you can definitely watch. And it was an exciting game. Tomorrow should be just as exciting, and of course, like, it was just one of those back and forth games.
So the next game we want to talk about is another upset. We had the Grand Valley State Lakers taking on the Lindenwood Belleville Lynx. 3-6 matchup there, and Grand Valley State, they shocked the Lynx and got that win on day one.
Yeah, absolutely. That was just like a surprising performance from the Lakers, and I think a lot of people were a little bit surprised. I think looking at all the matchups, like, we were thinking, you know, if anything might go the full 3 games, it might be the Lakers and the Lynx. And right now it has that possibility of doing that, especially after game 1 where an underdog wins. But I think the storyline just across all the divisions of ACHA hockey is that, you know, you can't really count any team out that's in this postseason tournament, just because they can strike at any time. And if a team gets hot at the right time, you know, they could go a long way and do a lot of damage in the tournament.
All right, and then we look at the top 2 seeds, Liberty and Adrian, the top 2 seeds. They were in the national championship a year ago, which you called.
Yeah.
And we saw both of them kind of take care of business tonight, but it wasn't easy for either team.
No, absolutely not. It was just Adrian College just had an unbelievable time just trying to figure out the goaltender during their game. They outshot their opponents by 3-1 at the end of the game. So that should kind of tell you about where most of the puck possession ended up being. It was just an absolute goaltending performance on the other end, and you know, that kind of sets up for fun matchups, because Adrian College won that game with 24.6 seconds left on the clock, and really what was a fun game to be a part of. And you just didn't know, because going the other way, wow, I just lost my train of thought there. But going the other way, yeah, like they had the Bearcats had opportunities on the other end coming off odd player rushes, and that's where they ended up getting their goals, was on the counterattack. So when you play a team that can counterattack as well as the Bearcats have, it makes for a really exciting brand of hockey, because you have one team that offensively is really sound, but you have another team that is really strong on counterattacks, and it was really fun to be a part of. And you know, I think all of us here, we had that inclination that, hey, this might go to overtime, until Adrian College scored with 24.6 left.
All right, and then Liberty gets the win over Midland in the nightcap here. We saw the top 2 teams kind of take care of business, although it was a little bit closer of a margin for Adrian in their game against McKendree. But we saw 2 upsets. Do we see anything like that tomorrow? Day 2 always seems to be the day where, like, most of the time, usually you get the clean sweeps in these best-of-3 series, but tomorrow we could have a couple games come down to Friday.
Yeah, I don't know. It's real hard to predict that. You know, Liberty and Midland, that one, it was close for a while, and then Liberty started pulling away. And sometimes it's tough to tell because, you know, they have a game like that. Usually the lower seeds, they tend to wake up after a good night sleep saying, hey, you know, that was a little bit scary. I think that with the teams that are up 1-0, I kind of mentioned, they kind of have house money going into that second game. You just tend to play a little bit looser, knowing that I don't want to say that you have a game to play with because, you know, a 1-game lead in a 2-game series really isn't a whole lot, or a 3-game series isn't a whole lot, because if you lose the next game, it makes it a little bit harder to get back and close them off in that second game. So the teams that won today, if they're going to close it out, you really want to see them close it out tomorrow. If not, then Friday kind of becomes a crapshoot, and you got to flip a coin or roll a dice or whatever your turn might be.
Yeah, always love the sudden death of games for a spot in the semifinals. We could see some of those on Friday, but you got to get through tomorrow to get to that, and you'll be here with the guys here calling the rest of the action tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. It should be a fun day of hockey. You know, you'll need to wake up maybe on your lunch break, maybe for breakfast. Should be some good hockey here at the Comerica Center. Yep, same team, same times tomorrow. 10 a.m. we'll see Michigan State taking on Miami of Ohio. At 1 o'clock you'll see Lindenwood Belleville taking on Grand Valley State. 4 o'clock you'll see McKendree taking on Adrian, and then the nightcap at 7 you'll see the Liberty Flames taking on the Midland Warriors. Bonds, thanks for joining us again here on ACHA tonight, and have fun tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely, man. You too. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk Women's Division II hockey as the Commissioner of Division II, Taylor Hadley, joins me here on the set as we continue ACHA tonight right here on the ACHA Network.
You ready? This guy's not ready. You're not ready. Let's go!
Hockey heads are special, which is why we protect them with a helmet designed, built, and tested to endure real-world hockey impacts.
And welcome back to ACHA tonight as we break down Day 7 of the 2019 ACHA National Championships here from Frisco, Texas. I'm joined now by the Commissioner of the Women's Division II ranks. Taylor Hadley joins me now. And first, Taylor, thanks for joining us on ACHA tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first day is in the books. It's always a big relief when the first day's over and all that planning goes into work. What were your thoughts about the first day over at McKinney?
It was super exciting. We had 6 games played. We had 2 overtimes. I mean, the energy was great. We had a lot of fans, which was a pleasant surprise. We weren't sure what the turnout was going to be compared to Columbus, so really excited about the turnout and the excitement.
Yeah, you talked about the overtime games, a lot of good competitive hockey that we saw over there. And it seems like year in and year out, this is, I believe, your second time doing Nationals, but even just from Columbus a year ago, the competitiveness has kind of stepped up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these teams work hard. They add more games to their schedule every season, so they were prepared. They came out bigger and better this season. Yeah.
So as a commissioner, what does it take to pull off a tournament like this?
It takes an army. Certainly, I have a huge volunteer staff, and obviously the ACHA staff is responsible for putting together the show. I've heard that Dallas Stars have played a big role in making this all happen, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's a lot of team effort, and even everything from hanging the decals at the rink to make it look and feel like a national tournament, to getting the score sheets ready, to hanging the banners, and just the feel, right? It's about the student-athlete experience, so really trying to make sure as many hands are in that pot, making that experience come to life.
Now, we had Craig Barnett on ACHA Tonight last night, and I talked to him about the women's game and just how much it's grown over the last couple of years. In your time as the D2 commissioner, what have you seen as far as the growth in this sport?
Yeah, definitely. So it's been exciting because we actually have at least one team that's finally transitioning from D2 up to D1 next season. So that's really the goal, right? We're trying to get these teams to grow and develop and move up to the D1 level. So that's happening next season. We've got one team moving up, at least one team moving up to D1. Like I said, the schedules are expanding. They're getting bigger, stronger, adding more games, more travel, which is huge. Just the number of teams, too. The growth has been there in the number of teams in the division.
All right, so then what's the next step here? You guys are starting to get those Division II teams to bump up to Division I. What do you see as the next step for Division II?
Oh, man. I think just more teams, just continuing to grow and making that kind of that base. We have a lot of teams that are still small and starting out, so trying to make sure that all of the teams in the division kind of take it to that next level and have bigger rosters, more games, more support from their school too. It's about rallying the schools to support the programs. Some of them are on the newer end and maybe do or don't have a men's team that they're piggybacking off of or leading the way. So yeah, I think just growth all around has been pretty exciting. So getting that extra support.
All right. Well, before I let you go, just your thoughts on the venue. So say you get to see this big rink that's behind us here. This is where the championship's going to be for your guys'
on
field.
Sunday. Yep.
And just the rink over in McKinney. Just your thoughts on just being down here for the past couple of days.
It's been super fun to be down here. I've heard great things from the teams. You know, they walk in, they're super excited. They think the facility is great. Super bright, the cameras, you know, capturing all the action. I think that it's been a good step, so we're really excited to be here.
All right, well, thank you, Taylor, for joining us tonight, and have fun over there in McKinney.
Thank you, thanks.
All right, that's Taylor Halley. She's the commissioner of Division II on the women's side, as we'll talk about the day that was at the D2 tournament coming up next, right here on ACHA Tonight. Don't go anywhere.
Skating was hard at first. Sometimes I fell, but I always got back up. Now when I'm skating, I feel like a rocket, or maybe a race car. Something really fast. It's my second favorite feeling. Scoring is my favorite. I think I like it even more than birthday cake.
And welcome back to ACHA Tonight as we continue to break down Day 7 of the 2019 ACHA National Championship Tournament here from Frisco, Texas. Up in McKinney, you found myself and Thomas Biondo as we call the Women's Division II tournament that kicked off up in McKinney earlier today. And Thomas, pretty wild action of game. We saw 2 overtimes, a couple of shutouts.
Yeah, and we saw a couple teams also that looked really, really good against the competition. I know my first game of the day, I had Minot State versus Rowan University, not the most common university out there. And the funny thing is Rowan actually scored on their first shot of the game, less than 2 minutes in. And they led 1-0, and they led the shots 1-0. And that's where it kind of turned south for them. Ended up being 16 straight by Minot. I believe they only got 8 shots the rest of the game. Minot had ownership papers of the puck, and they weren't giving it up. They looked outstanding. Again, key factor potentially, especially when you get to non-varsity hockey's number of participants. Minot State with a full bench. Rowan,
not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Only 1 line and 1 pair, and you can stay with a team for maybe a period or so, but eventually that much more depth is going to end up winning out.
Well, Minot State's got to have a little bit more motivation after falling to Lakehead in the championship game a season ago, trying to the redemption tour. We talked so much about it with Minot State's men's Division I team. Now the Division II girls get a chance for that redemption tour.
And I bet they were, in town for that. The game just finished yesterday. They may very well watch their D1 men's squad win the championship. So double motivation, even just seeing what it's like, being in the building to raise your trophy. It can be very inspiring.
Yep. So meanwhile, my first game on the other side is Cinnabon taking on Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst, the same kind of deal as Rowan. A little bit more of a bigger bench for the Lakers, but Cinnabon, one of the top teams a season ago, they pretty much handled business in their game. 8-0 the final score in this one is Cinnabon. Kind of started off, though, it was only 2-0 after the first period, but really turned it on in the second period. We added a couple of late goals to make it 8-0. Really not really a contest as well, but the Cougars get the win there. Look like an early favorite in this one. And then we go back to your side, and we saw a pretty good heck of a game between 2 Eastern teams.
Yeah, the 3 seed in the East and the 4 seed in the East, or ranked, I should say, because we're in pool play here. But Boston College played Northeastern. It was the Huskies that fell behind 2-0. It was a good game, good back and forth, but Boston College, the Eagles get the 2-0 lead going into the third period. 2 third-period goals by Northeastern, one very late in the game to forced it to overtime, and then they get the winner in overtime. And all 3 goals that they scored, net mouth scrambles. All 3 were carbon copies of each other. They got the goaltender down or out or just kept whacking away at pucks. I think that's something that Northeastern may really need to do going forward because they were successful doing it. Just keep crashing that net. It's something I'm going to keep an eye out for them because they were so successful. But again, 2 very evenly matched teams, I felt, in this game.
All right, as we go to my side, an interesting game, not on paper. You would assume the top seed out of the East taking on the bottom seed out of the West. As you saw, Bishop's University, the Gators taking on Adrian College, the 1 versus the 6. On paper, it doesn't look too flashy, but the Bulldogs gave everything that the Gators could handle to win the final, as the Gators just barely held on after taking a 2-1 lead, or 2-0 lead, and Adrian able to score late in the second period to make it a 1-goal contest, and just couldn't find that extra goal down the stretch. But the Gators, they struggled mightily, and I think and I want to ask you, because you saw a couple of the West teams as well, shows the depth that the West region has from top to bottom.
Absolutely, and you know, the other thing is you're completely right about the West, but just the other thing is, I have a hard time believing an Adrian team isn't going to be good.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. If an Adrian team's in an ACHA tournament, I'm thinking that they are going to go far. And you know, it's that same kind of thing where, you know, they just breed hockey out in that school, and so it's not too shocking to me that they're able to hang in. I know it's labeled 6 West. I believe their regular season record was actually fantastic. I believe they only had 1 or 2 losses. Don't quote me on that, but they had a really good record. I think it was a competition thing that kept them a little bit lower in the rankings.
Mercyhurst and Rowan, newcomers to this year's D2 tournament. Another newcomer was Iowa State, and they took on Buffalo in your next game.
And really, Buffalo scored 3 in the first, and that third goal in the first period occurred under 20 seconds remaining. And it was one of those games where we stayed at 3-0 for a long time. I think the fourth goal was scored probably midway through the third. And you just never got the feeling Iowa State had enough. There was never going to be that moment where they were going to be able to put together a string of good shifts to get a couple of goals to get back into the game. Again, I think there was a little bit of that numbers game that we talked about earlier going on there. You know, Buffalo has got a 46-goal scorer, 40-plus goal scorer in 18 games. Norton was her name, and she was fantastic. I see why. She never met a shot she didn't like, which is not a bad thing. It's always a good play to put the puck on the net. But they held her off the scoreboard. She was the one that scored the 4th goal. You could tell, actually, I think she was getting frustrated. But outside of that, Buffalo was just really, really dominant. Again, it ended up being, I believe, about a 40-shot advantage. And it wasn't that spread out in the first. The first 10 minutes, and that's where you know more probably about the number of people you have, that first 10 to 15 minutes was close. But that third goal at the end of the period, and then fresh, kind of that drained feeling of giving up that third goal for Iowa State.
Yeah, 4-0 the final score in that one is Buffalo. The 2 seed out of the East gets the win in that one. And then our final game over at McKinney, you had the 4 seed against the 3 seed in the East go to overtime. I had the 4 seed against the 3 seed in the West also go to overtime, 3-2.
Just flip them. I mean, that's what it is.
But this is the interesting one, that the Lakehead University Thunderwolves, the back-to-back defending national champions, were trailing in a good majority of this game. They were down 2-0 going to the third period. They scored an early goal in the third to make it 2-1, and then scored with about 4 minutes left to force overtime. But North Dakota State, credit the Bison, they played excellent defense throughout the stretch. They get the goal in overtime. They beat the defending national champions 3-2 in this overtime game, and I think was the game of the tournament so far.
You know, we're going to have to watch each other's game, because I enjoyed my game, thought my game might have been the game of the tournament. You're a big fan of your game. All right. But, you know, again, heart of a champion, and champions will always overcome too. So they drop the first game, but they'll get, you know, they're not out of it. That's the joy of pool play. Only 3-team pool play as well. So I think that works in their favor as well. It's not like they have that 4th team they've got to worry about.
Yeah, as we just looking forward at the pools here, that Lakehead North Dakota State game doesn't mean anything for pools because it was a cross-pool game. They're in different pools.
Okay.
They still have to play the both teams in their pool, so it's not going to matter down the stretch. Yes, you lost in overtime, but you still have everything ahead of you as far as your next 2 pool games.
Yep. So, and that's exactly the point. That everybody, I think there was one pool matchup each, and then they had everybody left over, kind of cross pool, and now I believe for the next 2 days will just be, I believe it's the same thing actually. That there will be some pool games and some non-pool games, just to get the crossworks and all the scheduling to work out.
Yep, so it'll be another jam-packed day tomorrow over at Division II at McKinney. Thomas and I will be on the call on both rinks, as we've kind of drawn the ship that burns the candle at both ends, I think, over there.
But you know what? Here's the thing. We can apologize right now to everybody else. If we missed turning a camera or something, just remember we were doing color and camera and play-by-play at the same time, so forgive us.
Yes, please forgive us. We apologize.
But we'll tell you what happened. We'll promise. We'll let you know. We'll get you up to date.
Yeah, taking a look at the schedule for tomorrow. Mercyhurst against Minot State takes off at 10 a.m. Thomas will be on that call. I'll have the Northeastern against the Assiniboine game, which should be a great matchup.
I think it should
at
be.
10:30. Rowan takes on Boston College at 12:30. Thomas will have the call on that one. Bishops against Iowa State. I'll have the call at 1 o'clock. You'll get to see the Lakehead Thunderwolves for the first time, a very familiar team that you'll be used to after calling that national championship a season ago. They'll take on Buffalo, and then they finish the final game. Should be a great one as Adrian College takes on North Dakota State.
I'm looking most, while I saw, seeing the list, hearing you talk about it, that third game, the defending national champs, a little bit of pressure now on after losing the first game. Again, you said it wasn't in pool play, but that means you got to get your points in pool play. So that's going to be really huge for them. And then on the other end, I liked Buffalo's game today. I really thought that they looked good. Like I said, it was an outstanding goaltending performance by Iowa State that kept that only a 4-goal game instead of a 6, 7, 8-goal game. She was phenomenal in net. It's going to be interesting because Buffalo had a lot of good scoring chances, so I'm interested to see how good really is Buffalo. And then, of course, you're going to find out, can the national champions pull it together, put it together, and get going here in pool play.
All right, so it's going to be a fun one over at McKinney. We'll be there on the call for day 2 of pool play from the Division II women's tournament. As we'll take one final break. When we come back, we'll break down the men's Division III tournament, day 2 of their tournament, as they kind of go through decision day, trying to find out who's going to be the Final Four to come back here to Comerica Center this weekend. We'll talk about that next with Lou Gamelin, right here on ACHA Tonight. And welcome.
Dallas, Texas, in a stadium that has been sold out for months, the Cotton Bowl.
Notre Dame leading 17-14. 1:10 remaining in the game, and Texas with Street at quarterback. Street gives to the second man for a touchdown for Texas.
The 2020 Bridgestone NHL Winter Classic, an annual celebration of hockey's heritage. Tickets on sale April 23rd. The Cotton Bowl, New Year's Day. It's gonna be a classic.
And welcome back to ACHA Tonight as we put a bow on things here on day 7 of the 2019 ACHA National Championship Tournament. It's time to talk about the men's Division III tournament, day 2 over at Plano, Texas, as we have Lou Gamelin joining us here tonight. Fresh off his call of a game-winning goal between Farmingdale State and Grand Valley State. We'll talk about it in just a minute, but Lou, just before we get to that, your initial thoughts on day 2.
Well, I'll tell you what, you called it last night, moving day, and there's some teams that are moving, some teams that are still waiting to find out where they're going to go. There's some great tiebreaker scenarios in a couple of the pools that we'll talk about a little later on. But I'll tell you, there was some great goaltending play and some great end-to-end action. Overall, it was a very fun day.
All right, let's start with Pool A, kicking things off. We'll talk about the 2-4 matchup. We get the 1-3 games and the 2-4 matchups here today. We get the 4-seed Central Florida taking on Air Force, the 2-seed, and Central Florida gets a pretty big win today.
They needed that, obviously, to keep into the pool play scenario. And Air Force, I feel sorry for them. Second year in a row that they've come in with a 1 or a 2 seed, and unfortunately, they're eliminated now from pool play with a tough loss to Central Florida. Got to give Central Florida a lot of kudos. Getting beat 12-3 in the first day. They come out and they pick up the win. Still kind of alive, hanging on by a thread, but at least they're playing in a meaningful game on day 3.
Meanwhile, the other game over in Pool A, we just wrapped up. We got to hear the call on it. Grand Valley State, Farmingdale State. We were on this broadcast last night talking about how dominant the Rams were. And the Lakers gave them all they could handle, and they end up getting the win in overtime.
Oh, my goodness, what a game. Power plays were the story in the early part of the game. Back and forth. Grand Valley, they showed why they're a power in the central region, or the north region, excuse me, as they held their own, and then they were able to come out with a thrilling overtime win. They got the game-tying goal midway through the third period, and then the big fella, the 7-footer, Julian Desaigne, I think his last name is pronounced, got the game winner in overtime, about 3 minutes and 45 seconds, I believe, in. And they control their own destiny now, does Grand Valley. Farmingdale State, still not out of it. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well.
We're going to talk about it right now. Let's talk about the Pool A brackets. As you mentioned, all 3 of those teams still have a shot. Grand Valley State, Farmingdale State, and Central Florida. They're all kind of jumbled up in that pool there. If Central Florida can get the win over Grand Valley State, that gives Farmingdale State a shot to get back into that semifinal.
Exactly. They would be 2-1. Farmingdale State and Grand Valley. Right now they're tied in goals against, and that's the third tiebreaker. But the head-to-head, obviously, Grand Valley wins. Grand Valley takes care of business. They're going to the semifinals. If they are tied, if UCF pulls off the upset, and there's a three-way tie at 2-1, again, it's going to be Farmingdale going, because Farmingdale and Grand Valley are tied at 7 apiece. So that's the scenario there. It's going to come down to that game. Grand Valley punches their ticket. If they win, Farmingdale State needs help.
All right, so that's Pool A. We'll keep an eye on that one. 2 games to keep an eye on in Pool A. Let's move to Pool B, as we saw the 2-4 and the 1-3 matchups. The first game of the day, we saw Oakland University taking on Fairfield in a very hotly contested game that also needed overtime, but Fairfield gets the win 2-1.
What do you say about Oakland? First of all, my kudos to them. They've been here. It'll be the 5th straight trip to the Nationals. Took it to overtime. They rode McCardle again in goal. But they had a scenario that was just like in D2 with the Cincinnati game against Northern Arizona that I got to call with that 5 seconds left to goal, or 0.5 of a second goal. Oakland had to pull their goalie. A tie does them no good. They pulled their goalie. Fairfield got the game-winning goal again as they won. Kyle Morano got the game winner for the 2nd day in a row in overtime to set up a winner-take-all game. So congratulations to Fairfield.
Yep, so taking a look at the Pool B, well, let's take a look at the Pool B standings in just a second, but the other game in Pool B, we saw Tampa and Kansas. The Jayhawks look really good, Todd.
Dane Johnson, 7 goals, I'm sorry, in 2 games. He had 4 tonight, 3, I believe, in the 3rd period, as they broke away from Tampa. It was close for a while. Tampa ended up winning, Kansas ended up winning 7-2. Sets up a great game, winner take all. It's going to be the last game of the night tomorrow in pool play at 7:30. Kansas and Fairfield. It's going to be a battle of an offense that is going on all cylinders against a defensive style of play of Fairfield. Boy, I'm looking forward to that matchup. It's going to be a dandy.
Yeah, so it was, as Lou mentioned, Fairfield and Kansas, the last game of the day. That'll be the winner-take-all game in Pool B. Winner of that one moves on to the semifinals. Let's move on to Pool C, which has also become a little muddy thanks to the games today. First off, Fordham, who got that upset win over Florida Gulf Coast yesterday, ends up falling to the Wolverines as Michigan now takes control of Pool C.
I'll tell you what, that game was incredible. Incredible because Joe Spanenberg, in a losing effort, Matt, had 63 saves. Michigan outshot Fordham in the 3rd period, 28-3, and got the game-winning goal about halfway through in the 3rd period to hang on to a 2-1 win. They threw everything but everybody's kitchen sink at Spanenberg. He's faced 101 shots in 2 games and has saved 97. But it just wasn't enough. Michigan showed a lot of speed, a lot of patience, and they didn't get frustrated when they couldn't put the goal past Spanenberg. So they move on. Obviously, they're in the driver's seat with the 2 wins going into tomorrow's game against Florida Gulf Coast.
Yeah, meanwhile, on the other side, once Florida Gulf Coast or Fordham lose today, they're kind of licking their chops. All right, we're back in it. They get a win over Nebraska today.
Yes, Gulf Coast over Nebraska. Kind of a slow start in that game, but they prevailed towards the end. So now they've got 1 win and 1 loss. They need a win tomorrow, obviously, against Michigan. But if they do that and Fordham wins, it sets up a cool scenario. But Michigan, they'll have the tiebreaker in the goals against.
All right, so that's the look at Pool C. So again, it comes down to both games depending on what happens in that Michigan-Florida Gulf Coast game. If the Eagles can get it, that sends it into the tiebreaker in Pool C. Pool D, it looks like it's another winner-take-all contest as Sioux and South Florida handled their business in Pool D, starting with the first one, South Florida taking on Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and the Bulls pretty much handled this one.
Well, I'll tell you, Milwaukee started out on top in that game, and then the Bulls finally, they came around and started throwing some pucks in the net. I like to play South Florida against Milwaukee. They show that they've got a chance. It's an outside shot. The Sioux looks really good, but South Florida came to play today, and they're 2-0 in pool play.
And meanwhile, the other game, Ramapo and Sioux. Sioux breaks the double-digit mark here as they put 12 goals up on Ramapo, and Sioux looks like the team to beat, obviously, here now. I think they would be the team to beat in any of the pools right now.
Oh, without a doubt. Again, they've scored 20 goals, I believe it is now, or 21 goals. 21 goals in 2 games. I give Ramapo credit. You know, they came out, they scored some goals on them, but Sioux they've got 4 lines there, so quick, so patient, so fundamentally sound. Man, it's gonna be a good game tomorrow against South Florida. You know, if I was a betting man, I would say the Sioux has got the advantage, but hey, you know, they still got to lace them up and get out on the ice and play the game. So it's going to be a winner-take-all game for those two again, Sioux and USF tomorrow.
Yep. So that'll wrap up Pool D. So we're 2 days in. No seeds have been claimed yet. We're going to go down to day 3 to decide all 4 of our national semifinalists. It's going to be a fun day tomorrow.
Oh, it sure is. Again, the big game is going to be the #1 big game, I think, is Kansas and Fairfield. And how apropos, it's going to be the last game of the night. Then you've got Michigan taking on Florida Gulf Coast. And if Fordham also beats Nebraska again, and Michigan loses to Florida Gulf Coast, it's a 3-way tie, but Michigan would get the tiebreaker, as Florida Gulf Coast would have to beat them by at least 3 goals, because Michigan's only given up 1 goal in the tournament with 2 different goaltenders. And so that kind of sets the scenario. And then one more time, the tiebreaker again with the other scenario, again, Grand Valley State, they win, they're automatically in. UCF pulls off the upset. Farmingdale and Grand Valley State Farmingdale could have the edge with goals again. So it's still wide open.
It's going to be a fun day tomorrow, and I know you and the guys over at Plano will have a blast doing that before you guys come over here to do the semifinals. It should be a fun time.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
All right, just a reminder on the schedule tomorrow. Things kick off at 10 a.m. at Plano tomorrow. Oakland takes on Tampa at 10. Wisconsin-Milwaukee against Ramapo at 10:30. Central Florida against Grand Valley State at 1. Fordham against Nebraska at 1:30. Michigan against Florida Gulf Coast. That's a big game to watch at 4 o'clock. Air Force takes on Farmingdale State at 4:30. Also one to keep an eye on. South Florida and Sioux College. That'll be a winner-take-all battle at 7 o'clock, and 7:30 will be the game that Hugh talked about, Fairfield and Kansas, wrapping up the day at D3. And then by the end of the night, we'll know who the top 4 teams are that'll be coming to play right behind us here at the Comerica Center on Friday. That's going to do it for us here on ACHA tonight. It's been a fun day. We got an action-packed day tomorrow as 3 divisions continue their pool play tomorrow. The women's D1 bracket continues their best-of-3 series as well. We'll have it all for you here tomorrow beginning at 10 a.m. across the rinks here in Frisco, Plano, and McKinney. We'll have it all for you on the ACHA network as well. For Lou Gamlin, Baza Chavari, Thomas Biondo, Molly Mahoney, and Taylor Hadley, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us for ACHA tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow for Day 8 here from Frisco, Texas. Have a great night.